Hebrews, Hebrews, Hebrews. This is Prophets of Awakening. This is our evening Shabbat class, 24th of August, 2024. Okay, we're going to be dealing with lost translations, how some parts of the text has been, it's been tampered with, but we have some parts that, because of that, they've been lost. The understanding has been lost in translation, so we're going to look at a couple of those for our topic for discussion. Okay, you can go to our YouTube channel, The Prophets of Awakening, check out our videos. We have over 1,000 or so videos, that you can examine and check out. These videos will lead you to the truth of the Holy Scriptures. And I'm asking you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you find them interesting. Okay. Our hours of operation are Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 7 to 9 Central Time. Friday nights we have our Men's Advanced Bible on Clubhouse. And the room is Non-Messianic Conversations. That's also 7 to 9. Then we have 2 Shabbat classes, one in the morning from 10 to 12 a.m. Central Time. Then we close out the Shabbat from 6 to 7 in the evenings, okay? So for those that don't know, this is a non-Messianic channel. We deal with the Tanakh and the Torah. Tanakh being the Old Testament, so-called Book of Remembrance, and the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Old Testament that was given to Moses by our Redeemer, the Lord of Hosts. Shalom and welcome to this channel, and welcome to our evening Shabbat class. Okay, we're going to do our normal, which is a moment of silence, Sabbath prayer, Psalms. We have some current events, need to know information, and we'll open it up for some questions and comments and a little dialogue. Then we'll go into our topic for discussion, which is lost in translation, dealing with some information that was lost in translation and could have the wrong interpretation of it. It was deliberately giving you the wrong interpretation. Okay? This moment of silence is for the Lord of hosts, and all that he's doing to bring about our prophesied deliverance in these last days. Okay? Oh Lord, we come this day, bow down and honoring you, praising you, believing in you. And we thank you for your wisdom and your knowledge that you have poured out upon us. Okay? We see you now within the Holy Scriptures, oh Lord, and we trust you with all our heart and soul. Keep not that silence to shine forth on our enemies with our power and our glory. Peace be unto you. Okay? So with that being said, I want to read the Psalms. Okay? Let me read the Psalms right quick. Okay. All these Psalms are 50. Okay? It's a prayer for deliverance. It says, deliver me from my enemies, O my God. Defend me from them that rise up against me. Deliver me from the workers of iniquity, and save me from the bloody man. For lo, they lie in wait for my soul. The mighty are gathered against me, not for my transgressions, nor for my sin, O Lord. They run and prepare themselves without my fault. Awake and help me, and behold. Thou therefore, O Lord God of hosts, God of Israel, awake to visit all the heathen, and be not merciful to any wicked transgressors. Selah. They return at evening. They make a noise like a dog, and they go round about the city. And behold, they bleak out with their mouth, swords are in their lips. For who, say they, doeth hear? But thou, O Lord, shall laugh at them. Thou shalt have the heathen in derision. Because of his strength will I wait upon thee. For God is my defense. The God of my mercy shall prevent me. God shall let me see my desire upon my enemies. Slay them not, lest my people forget. Scatter them by thy power, bring them down, O Lord of our shield. For the sin of their mouth and the words of their lips, let them even be taken in their pride, and for cursing and lying which they speak. Consume them in a wrath, consume them that they may not be, and let them know that God ruleth in Jacob unto the ends of the earth. Selah. And at evening let them return, and let them make a noise like a dog, and go round about the city. Let them wander up and down for meat, and guard if they are not satisfied. But I will sing of thy power, yea, and I will sing aloud of the mercy in the morning, for thou hast been my defense and refuge in the day of my troubles. Unto thee, O my strength, will I sing. The God is my defense, and the God of the God of my mercy. That was Psalm 59, prayer for deliverance. Any comments on that? Questions?
Shalom, no sir.
Okay. So we go to some current events. Okay.
The United States is now preparing for lockdowns, for quarantining, and for additional screening and testing. But I want to break this down because a lot of experts are now saying that there's a crisis coming to the United States, and a lot of it has to do with misinformation. So I want to break down what's happening, but I want to provide you the truth. I want to give you the facts and tell you that yes, there's a massive concern that's about to hit the U.S., especially as children go back to school. So again, I'm going to break all this down in just a moment. All I ask is one thing. It takes 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button if you enjoy these daily updates. And now, let's begin. So why are experts so concerned about the U.S. and potentially going on lockdown? Well, it's simple. It has to do with Mpox, or what is formerly known as monkeypox. But here's the thing. Mpox, yeah, there's a new deadlier variant to Mpox. It's called Clade 1. And this is something that's been transmitted over in Congo. But the concern is, what does Mpox look like? Here's what you need to understand, okay? Mpox has symptoms that are very similar to other infectious diseases. This is why experts are concerned. Look at this one right here. This is chickenpox. Again, for those that are a little squeamish or don't want to look at it, I understand. This is chickenpox, okay? Chickenpox looks very similar to Mpox. You know what else, in some cases, looks similar to Mpox or the beginning of it? Well, measles. The measles rash. Look at this. So this is all what experts are concerned with. They are highly concerned because they say that chickenpox, measles, smallpox, which is much more severe than Mpox, a sexually transmitted infection can have a very similar look as Mpox as well, and a bacterial skin infection. All these things can be very similar to Mpox. But this is the reason why experts are concerned. Look at this. This is an article from today. It says, U.S. faces growing measles outbreak as vaccine skepticism rises. According to a new Gallup poll, support for childhood vaccinations has dropped considerably since 2019. But why? It's simple. The American people have put less trust and faith in the CDC and the World Health Organization, all because of what we went through during the last pandemic of COVID. So now there's millions and millions of people out there that don't want to get their children vaccinated for measles and chickenpox. Guess what? Experts say those are going to spread. Now, why could this be an issue? Because initially, when you first look at someone's skin, let's say it looks like this. Okay, you first look and you see this as a doctor. Your first thought is, okay, we need to get you tested. Or you see this one. Yeah, that is severe. We need to get you tested. We need to know, is this chickenpox? Is this smallpox? Is this mpox? What is it? And that's where some are saying that for those that are less fortunate, don't have insurance, don't have the right coverage, or are not near a clinic or a hospital, they may never get checked. And so this could potentially spread. Now, I want to show you some numbers here. And these are the measles cases in 2024. Okay? It says as of August 22nd, 2024, a total of 227 measles cases were reported by 29 jurisdictions. You can see the list here if you want to pause the video. If not, I'm not going to read them all. Okay? It says there's been 13 outbreaks defined as 3 or more related cases reported so far in 2024. 68% of cases are outbreak associated. For comparison, 4 outbreaks were reported during 2023, and 49 of the cases were outbreak associated. Now, I want to show you the age breakdown first. Look at this. It says these are the cases for 2024, 227. The age, under 5 years old, 89. That's 39%. 5 to 19 years old, 67 or 30%. And 20 plus years is 71 or 31%. 86% of those people were unvaccinated or unknown. Now, why am I telling you all this stuff about measles when we are worried about mpox? Well, the reason is because the CDC is working.
Popeye's Big Box is back for just $6.99.
And other experts are worried as well. Doctors included. I talked to a friend of mine just recently, and this was one of his concerns, is he is seeing a lot of rashes because, again, people are going back to school. So you see a rash on your skin or on your child's skin, you're like, oh no, I need to max up. I can't touch you. Like, jump in the car. We got to go to the doctor. We need to make sure you're healthy. Well, here's the issue. Measles cases in the U.S. are already triple last year's numbers. And it's only, well, this is only July when this came out, but it's August. So here's the concern. What about all those people going back to school? And now you come into the classroom and I'm just really itchy. You're scratching your arm, your back, whatever it may be, and your teacher looks like you got a major rash. That might be measles, that could be chickenpox. Well, what if it's mpox? What if? Right? What if? That's the question. And this is why I'm bringing this up. And earlier I talked about how schools, they don't have no plans on school closures in the event of an mpox outbreak, because mpox is visible. We can see it, not like COVID. COVID you couldn't see, right? It was an airborne illness, airborne virus. And you didn't know, did that guy have COVID? He just coughed or she just coughed. Well, I got to be concerned about them too. But with mpox, with measles, with chickenpox, you can see it. It's visual. And that's why I bring this to your attention. 4 million people per year get chickenpox. About 12,000 of those people become hospitalized. Okay? So, when we start to break it down, when we look at all the facts, the fact is that the United States and the American people do not trust the CDC because of what they didn't tell us. Okay, what we did, but they didn't tell us, and how it didn't actually work. This is a concern. This is why experts are highly concerned that we could potentially see more shutdowns here in the United States. And it's not because of an mpox outbreak. It's because of a mpox scare, misinformation. That's what we're hearing. And again, I'm bringing this to you today because this coming week, we're going to see a lot of people head back to school. Within the next couple weeks, most people will be back to school. That means more illnesses, colds, the flu, COVID, right? Everything is going to start to spread again. We know that. But don't get too scared. Just understand that this is going to happen. We will likely see mpox spread around the United States a little bit more than it has already, but it's the people that are really scared, the people that have their immune system is not really up to par. So all those people, yes, we're going to see them get freaked out, potentially lock themselves in their homes, not go to school, not go to work, and that is as expected.
Any comments on that?
Shalom. My question is, he mentioned that it's coming from the Congo, but when they're at the airport, if a person has that disease or the mpox, and it said you can clearly see it looks like chickenpox or measles, would they not stop them from, entering into the country and tell them that you might have to, like the TSA or going through customs because they're coming from, another country with a passport? Shouldn't they go through some kind of screening? If they look ill, they would go somewhere else in the airport to get checked out before they continue to leave the airport and go about their business to whatever other city or wherever they land at. If they're in Philadelphia, and then they continue to go places. I mean, why isn't there a screening for someone that may look like if mpox is something that's coming out right now, to take a screening of those people who may look like they have it or some form of it?
Well, I'm quite sure they got that. They had it in place. I mean, I couldn't see them just allowing people to come into the country without some kind of measures up where they get checked or tested or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, shalom. So he's making it sounds as if the person came from Congo and was able to just get on the plane, come to America, and then go about his business. And then he's saying about children coming back to school. People are being, what about their kids? And someone could be in the school home, scratching and things like that, and they could be carrying the disease. If that's so, how long? I don't know how long it takes for one to for the mpox to actually germinate into the skin or into the body and present those sores to a point that one clothing would be stuck to them or whatever. But that's, he's making it sound like it's here and they're going to be unaware of it. He said you can plainly see about COVID, but COVID is like a sniffle, cold. You don't know you really have it until you really get ill, sickly, your immune system break down quickly. But the mpox looks like he says, measles or chickenpox. I couldn't see the picture, but if that is so, I mean, one would, see it clearly. He's saying it's, I don't know. Like I said, I can't see it, but if it is like the chicken pox, you can really see it. It goes to the face and arms and legs. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, here we go.
I feel like we're being pushed into civil war.
Yes, of course.
All the lies and the division. I mean, of course, who do you think is pushing it? I've heard you talk several times on Building 7. So that building got reported being down 26 minutes before it actually fell. And you can't...
Totally normal.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago, was talking about the Salomon.
There's a woman on TV talking on BBC, talking about...
Oh, I've seen it.
Yeah, talking about how the building is already down, is already collapsed, and it's right behind her.
Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
See, behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still...
Let me just say, 6 minutes later, the building collapsed. What do you
Well,
think?
first of all, how dare you for noticing? No, that's the official position of Washington. Shut up. If your answer to a sincere question like, how did that happen, is shut up, it's to attack me for asking the question, then I know you're rotten. I know you're serving evil. I mean, that's the hallmark of it. You're attacking me for asking an obvious question? Really? Because I'm not a slave. I don't work for you. I'm a free man in a supposedly free country. Therefore, I have an inalienable right, which is to say given by God right, to ask obvious questions. Who went and, were asked to risk your lives and to kill other human beings and to really give up everything for the sake of this thing. And the disillusionment that I have noticed in men like you who've really done a lot for this enterprise and then come to the obvious conclusion that it's not exactly what it seems.
We're trying to get into CIA.
Yeah, it's Vladimir Putin reminded me. I don't know how you knew that. So when I applied to CIA, and I've taken a lot of crap, including from Putin, like, oh, you're from a CIA family. Well, yeah, obviously my father worked in conjunction with CIA. I mean, that's what that is. And I tried to join the CIA, but I'm not being false about it. I am a sworn enemy of the CIA at this point.
With the backing of CIA, of course. The organization you wanted to join back in the day, as I understand. We should thank God they didn't let you in. Although, it is a serious organization. I understand.
When did you kind of notice the weaponization of mainstream media?
I didn't realize how totally corrupt. That there is no ideal at the center of it.
He could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think, and that is our job.
Control exactly what people think, and that is our job.
It's actually the most corrupt institution in the United States by far. Curiosity died in the media. They're now officially opposed to curiosity. I'm amazed by podcasts. I just think, talk about a likely vector for truth. That's why I'm sitting right here. It's why I was attracted to your podcast.
Early on Sunday, we learned, no big deal, that UFOs have been flying into restricted airspace off the coast of Virginia every day for years.
What I find so striking about the UFOs, this is the main takeaway I have, but what I find so interesting, we know the government's lied about it. They're lying about it now. That's a fact. There's no way around it. They've absolutely lied about it in very elaborate ways. I am really struck. Here's my current thinking on it. The main effort that the U.S. government has put into its disinformation, its lying on this topic, has been not to mislead you on the technology. They're not telling me they don't have anti-gravity technology. It sounds from watching your podcast that they do.
As soon as I looked past them, I could see this giant monolithic slab just sitting there.
Really?
Yeah.
There are people in the media who specialize in spreading these lies on behalf of the government. I'm not going to name anybody, but like some of them work at the New York Times. Their main interest is in convincing you that the supernatural is not real. I'm not rooting for revolution. Don't want one. A lot of people die. I don't know if it'll work. They rarely improve anything. If the people rule, what possible justification could you have from hiding something from me? Because it's my government. Well, of course, the answer is it's not our government. It belongs to the people who run it. The organization exists for its own sake, not for yours. You just pay for it. And that kind of justifies revolution right there.
So, on this video right here, Tucker Carlson was talking about how he feel like America is being pushed into a civil war, right? And also, I wanted to get somebody's feedback on that. What do you think? What people think about that? Do you think that that's the case? We're being pushed into, we're being set up for a civil war? How you take that? Any
Shalom.
comments on that?
Shalom.
Okay.
I really don't know because so much is happening where we got the political side and then they're talking about the financial side, and then you got people still lolly-darring, around, and then you have people with the spiritual side of it. So it's so much going on at one time just to try to focus on the war coming about. People not really realizing or taking heed that I can see in where I'm at about this, unless they're like silently speaking with their friends or behind closed doors. But most, I haven't seen much on the news, basically them shouting and wanting, a lot of more controversy. I don't really see it too much happening soon as they're trying to portray it's going to be.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So when you look at it, I mean, if you go back to even with January 6th and everything that happened with that and coming up to the day, I mean, I was listening to somebody talking earlier how was this guy Trump even that's treason. Supposed to be hanged for what he done on January 6th. But not only did he not get hung, now he's he's running for the president of the United States. And that's just crazy. It don't make any sense. So when you look at that, and the crazy following that he have, it's a recipe for disaster. It's like it's got revolution and civil war written all over it. Okay, like you said, like they said, it's whether they win, the Republicans win or lose, it's gonna be a revolt. It's gonna be chaos after doing this election right after, whether the Republicans win or lose. Okay.
Shalom. Yes, sir. So right on, I think it's September the 18th or 16th, I'm not sure of that date, that he's supposed to go back to court for them to file his sentence per se. So that, to me, after he goes into court for what they're saying about the 34 convictions on guilty for him, that's really going to determine, to me, how things are going to leap from the page from that point. If he goes there and leaves out of there and back on the campaign trail. Now, I think a lot of people are expecting for him to actually be indicted and go to jail. Then some are just saying, okay, he's too powerful or whatever their mindsets are as far as that, because right now it's not as heated. At one point it was, he's going to jail, so he's not going to be running, and then they see him on the podium doing a debate with Biden, and now there's another court date for him to be sentenced. So we'll see what happens from there. And like you said, January the 6th, a lot of people were, I don't know if it's more group of the mega or how large they are to get out there and go for it again, because they noticed that they've been arrested and everything. So if he's not ahead of it, so he says he's going to pardon them, they may go ahead and say, okay, he becomes president, we got pardoned for doing what we're going to do. I don't know. It just seems crazy.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments on that? Okay.
No.
Some need to know information right here.
That is it. And even more importantly, just how long does the U.S. have to continue to be the primary world superpower? And in this video, I'm going to discuss the rise and the fall of many of the great empires, what is consistent among all of those collapses, and where exactly the U.S. is right now, especially relative to China. And then at the end of this video, I'm going to discuss what you can do to protect yourself from the inevitable because every great empire in history has collapsed, so that you don't have to worry about your finances when that happens. But before I get into all the details, my name is Noel Mathias, and if you want to thrive financially, if you want more, this is the place for you. So do me a favor, if at the end of this video you found it useful or interesting, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button so more people like you can see this video.
No confused employees, just a well-informed workforce. Enjoy the silence with Inspira.
We know you have choice.
Okay.
World order. And whether you want to delve into the full book or not, you can simply search Ray Dalio, The Changing World Order, and LinkedIn, and Ray Dalio has posted summaries of each chapter. Now, that being said, many of the charts in this video do come from Ray Dalio's book. However, a lot of the research has been done outside of that book. Research that I've done on my own using scholarly journals, encyclopedias, and I have come to many of my own conclusions, which in a lot of ways mirror Ray Dalio's opinions, but in a lot of ways don't. And there's one specific difference between Ray Dalio's thought process and mine, which I think is quite interesting. Now, that being said, Ray Dalio is incredibly more successful than I am. He is one of the leading thinkers in the world right now, especially when it comes to economic collapses. But I do think that even with the best thinkers in the world, there is always a need for context and simplification. And that's what I intend to do in this video, is try to simplify a very, very complex topic. Over the last several hundred years, we've seen the Netherlands be the #1 superpower in the world, to be taken out essentially by the United Kingdom, and then the United States taking over just after World War II as the primary world superpower. And a lot of this has to do with several things, including military power, economic power, GDP, and most importantly, the status as the world's reserve currency. And as you can see from Ray Dalio's chart here, China is very much on the rise, while the United States is facing, at this moment right now, a decline. Now, in my research, I was able to determine that there are essentially 5 reasons why superpowers collapse. Now, there's all kinds of articles out there. There's articles that say there's 7 reasons, or 12 reasons, or 15 reasons. But what I did is I took a look at the most recent superpower collapses, and then I compared them to one of the most famous and the most horrific empire collapses, which was that of ancient Rome. And when you go back in history, you can see that there are things that continually happen time and time. And what I found was that there was 5 commonalities between the recent collapses of world superpowers and that of ancient Rome. And they were primarily economic decline, military overreach, political instability and corruption, internal strife and rebellions, and external pressures. And primarily external pressures means pressures from other countries. Now, Dalio has this chart where he talks about the typical big cycle behind empires, rises, and declines. And as you can see, there's always a new world order, and then there's peace, prosperity, and productive debt growth, and then eventually a debt bubble and a big wealth gap. Is this starting to sound familiar? And then eventually there's a debt bust and an economic downturn. This would be the equivalent of what happened in 2008 and the financial crisis. And after that, countries tend to begin printing money and credit, which leads to eventually revolutions and wars as their power financially starts to decrease. And after that, you start to see debt and political restructuring. And once we hit that point, which is typically after a war, by the way, you start to see a new world order emerge. Now, that doesn't mean that the previous superpower completely collapses, because as you are well aware, the United Kingdom still exists, as does the Netherlands. But what it does mean is that a new power rises to dominance. And in this case, it is starting to become apparent that China has a very good likelihood of once again being that superpower. Because in the past, China has in fact been the primary world superpower. And I'll show you a little bit more on that a little bit later. But I want to provide some context here first by taking a look at ancient Rome. The Roman Empire had these same 5 things that happened. They had overexpansion and military spending that led to severe financial strain within the empire. That eventually led to heavy taxation, and that subsequently led to inflation, and that weakened the entire economy. And lastly, the reliance on slave labor, which was very much upended by several major wars, which led to a lot of deaths within the empire, including that of many of the slaves, stifled innovation, and hampered economic mobility. So in other words, without the workers that were so necessary to keep the economy going, the economy essentially imploded. Now, in addition to that, there was significant military outreach and defeats. There were continuous military campaigns that drained resources. Ancient Rome was obviously an empire that sought to expand its reach, but that only could last so long. And eventually, as the Roman Empire started to show its weaknesses, there were invasions by barbarian tribes, and essentially that led to a reduction in resources that pretty much stifled the Roman Empire to a place where it could no longer succeed. Now, with those invasions came frequent changes in leadership and civil wars. There was infighting, and as more and more leaders tried to take the helm, that led to corruption, and that eroded the trust in the leadership. Is this starting to sound familiar? And this all eventually led to the splitting of the empire into eastern and western halves, with the west falling in 476 AD. So essentially you had a once great empire that was split in two. Now, this was very much physically, but if you look at what's happening in the United States right now, where the country is very much being split from an ideological perspective, it starts to become apparent that there are certain lessons we can learn from the Roman Empire. But here's the major one. Social and economic inequality led to internal conflicts. The rich got richer, the poor got poorer, and that led essentially to civil unrest. And it was the rebellions and the power struggles among the different factions that ultimately led to a place where the empire just could no longer continue. So as you can see, there's some clear parallels between the current day United States and the Roman Empire. And this is important. You need to be paying attention to this because it is clear that if things get worse, and by the way, all of this stuff can absolutely turn itself around. But if things get worse, well, we could find ourselves in a situation where China really does become the new world superpower. So returning to our reasons why superpowers collapse, Ray Dalio has a great chart here that shows the relative standing of great empires. And this goes back to the early 1500s. And essentially what you can see is that there's always, as one superpower, like the Netherlands, the yellow line, is declining, there's always another one on the rise. As the United Kingdom started to decline, the United States was on the rise, and now it seems as the United States is declining, China is on the rise, which makes it somewhat likely that they could be the next world superpower, except there's one major thing, which I'll get to a little bit later on, which could potentially prevent them from taking the United States out completely as the primary world superpower. But before we get to that, I want to point out that there are certain things that happen early in an empire's rise and certain things that happen early in an empire's decline. And I'm going to point out right now that the black line, which is the reserve status, is typically the last thing that starts to decline. And it tends to happen very late in the cycle, almost 20 years after the start of the decline of pretty much all of the other factors. But if you look at the first two things that almost always start the rise of an empire, it's almost always education and innovation and technology. Think about the US taking over from Great Britain as the world superpower. It was very much the creation of the atomic bomb, the innovation and the technology associated with nuclear power that led them to become the new world superpower. Now, from an education and an innovation and technology perspective, it's quite clear that China is also on the rise. But the question is there a decline in the US's education and innovation and technology? And if you look at the world of what's happening with AI right now, it's hard to argue that the US's impact on innovation and technology isn't still on the rise. And on the same note, if you take a look at things like the military, trade, economic output, these things all seem to be also continually on the rise in the United States. It doesn't seem like we've hit that inflection point where we are quite on the decline yet. Now, is there some question about whether the status as a reserve currency is on the line? Yes, there are many countries that would like to see the US dollar abandoned. And is there an argument to be made that we are no longer the primary financial center? Well, we're still the financial center of the world. However, there are countries that are trying to knock the US off of that perch. But China and the US, which includes the US being the biggest buyer of Chinese goods and China being the biggest supplier of US goods. Now, there's one theme that has been consistent when we've talked about the Roman Empire, the Netherlands, and the UK. And that is that the collapse of all of those empires
was largely due to a significant war. And it's my opinion that the prospects of war is the one thing that could see the United States and China actually not interchange with respect to their superpower status, but very much run in parallel for a significant period of time. Because there's a whole bunch of things that make war between the US and China less likely than a war between countries like the Netherlands and the UK. There is the diplomatic engagement and communication, the instant communication between nations that never existed before. Then there's also the economic interdependence, the fact that China relies on the US as much as the US relies on China. Now, clearly with the BRICS nations, they're trying to do everything they can to make it so the US can't dominate who a country can trade with, but that doesn't mean that if, in fact, the BRICS nations are able to come up with an alternative reserve currency, that it will definitely take out the US dollar as the primary reserve currency. In fact, there's a lot of good evidence to show that there could be multiple reserve currencies in the future. I'll link to a video about that at the end. But the big one, and the most important one, is the military deterrence and balance. You have two superpowers, both have nuclear weapons, and unlike in the past, where an invasion or a fight or a war could have been devastating but not catastrophic, a war between two superpowers in today's day and age would in fact be catastrophic to not just one, but both economies. And we're not talking about a significant portion of a population being wiped out. We're in fact talking about the majority of a population being wiped out.
Okay, so listening to that, this is where Esau coming in at he's a pro at this. And he's he know exactly everything that's being said. He did all his research on that, and he knows just how to bring an empire up and to bring an empire down. And that's what we're witnessing right here. Everything he's saying is happening, but it's being controlled. It's got powers that be, which is these Edomites, bankers. It's a controlled demo job. If you sit back and look at it, you can see it. Okay. Anybody have any comments on that? Before we go into our lesson, which is lost in translation, I want to open up for some questions and comments and dialogue. Anybody have any questions about anything they came across, they heard on this channel, or they want to talk about before we go into the dealing with this lost in translation?
Shalom. No, sir, not at this time.
Okay, so with that being said, play this here and then we'll go into our topic for discussion. So everybody's been hearing about Agenda 25, right? So we go Agenda 47.
Have you heard about Agenda 47? Hey, it's Dan Zimmerman and welcome back to Illustrate to Educate. In this video, we'll look at a brief overview and 7 specific areas of Agenda 47. First, what is Agenda 47? Agenda 47 outlines Donald Trump's policy plans for his 2024 presidential campaign, presented through a series of videos on his campaign's website. These proposals aim to appeal to Republican primary voters. The plans include expanding presidential power, mass deportations, the death penalty for drug dealers, and using the National Guard in high-crime liberal cities. Additional proposals involve constructing freedom cities, investing in flying cars, offering baby bonuses, and implementing protectionist trade policies, with several requiring congressional approval or constitutional amendments. In Agenda 47, Trump promises to make the U.S. energy independent again by developing domestic oil, natural gas, and other affordable energy sources, including nuclear and clean coal. He plans to cancel Biden's energy regulations, modernize the electric grid, and ensure America has the lowest energy costs among industrial nations. Trump's goal is to attract manufacturing back to the U.S. by providing cheap and reliable energy, boosting the economy, and creating jobs. Donald Trump's Agenda 47 criticizes the previous administration for excessive spending, causing inflation and economic hardship. Trump proposes reining in this spending by reinstating the president's historical impoundment power, which allows the president to refuse unnecessary funds provided by Congress. He argues this will cut federal waste, reduce taxes, stop inflation, and slash the deficit. Trump promises not to cut national defense, Medicare, or Social Security, Instead, use savings from other areas to strengthen these programs. He also aims to challenge the Empowerment Control Act of 1974 in court, asserting this policy will eliminate the deep state, warmongers, and globalists, promoting growth and freedom. Donald Trump aims to restore America's boldness and significantly improve the standard of living. He proposes using a small portion of federally owned land to build freedom cities, promoting home ownership and the American dream. Trump envisions leading the air mobility revolution with vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, boosting commerce and connecting rural areas. His strategic national manufacturing initiative will revive forgotten communities by reducing reliance on imports. He plans to lower living costs, particularly for new cars and homes, and introduce baby bonuses to encourage a new baby boom. Donald Trump's Agenda 47 criticizes the previous administration for the current state of the U.S. military, citing ammunition shortages and low recruitment rates. Trump claims Biden's actions, such as sending cluster bombs to Ukraine and calling up reserve forces, indicate severe resource depletion and compromised national security. He argues that under his administration, the military was strong and deterrent, ensuring peace through strength, whereas now the U.S. is weakened and humiliated. Trump plans to restore military strength, end the conflict in Eastern Europe, and demand European reimbursement for U.S. aid to Ukraine. Donald Trump criticizes left-wing gender policies as child abuse and outlines a plan to end what he calls the mutilation of youth. On his first day in office, he plans to revoke Biden's policies on gender-affirming care, which include puberty blockers and surgery for minors. Additionally, the Department of Justice will investigate Big Pharma and hospital networks for covering up side effects and illegal marketing of hormones and blockers. The Department of Education will penalize schools promoting gender transitions and promote education on traditional family roles. He will also seek legislation to recognize only male and female genders assigned at birth and protect parental rights in matters of gender identity. Donald Trump's Agenda 47 outlines a plan to combat the influx of lethal drugs like fentanyl, heroin, and methamphetamine across the U.S. border, which he claims are causing unprecedented destruction to American lives and communities. Trump pledges to wage an all-out war on these cartels, employing military assets, special forces, cyber warfare, and designating them as foreign terrorist organizations to cut off their financial networks. He also plans to restore strong border security, enforce a naval embargo on drug shipments, and seek death penalties for drug smugglers and human traffickers.
Okay, so if you look at this, you'll see that if you look at the election, look at what's happening with the polls and all that, he's falling. And the Democrats with Kamala Harris, they rising. So, and then one of the main things that's causing them to fall in the polls is all the information that's coming out on Agenda 25, right? So these Republicans come back with this right here, with Agenda 47, right? And trying to counter that. But from my observation, I don't see that it's working. So yeah, any comments on that? Okay, so with that being said, like I said, I was going to deal with this lost in translation. You know, everybody that knows anything about Prophets of Awakening know that we don't deal with JC, right? Got a serious problem with it. So check this out. It's just right here, another golden nugget.
Hello, everyone. Today I want to take another text from the Bible in this series that I've been doing called Lost in Translation. What I'm doing is taking certain verses or texts of the Bible generally. That could be the Hebrew Bible, Old Testament, or the New Testament. Verses that have been misunderstood, often mistranslated, misapplied, misinterpreted. And these are verses that have been taken out of context or even translated incorrectly and simply misunderstood. So the phrase today I want to pick up on is the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven. It's from Daniel 7, verses 13 and 14, and it's a vision of the book of Daniel. And what I want to point out is it's not about Jesus. the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven has nothing to do with Jesus. And in the original context, it's actually interpreted differently as something else. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll take a look at this text in its context. We're looking at Daniel chapter 7. The Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven is not Jesus. When Christians have read this, and often even when Jews have read it, Christians have said, well, that's Jesus. And some Jewish interpreters over the ages have said, well, that's the Davidic Messiah. That's the Messiah coming in the clouds of heaven. However, within the chapter itself, it is interpreted. So here's the context. Daniel has a dream. It's also called a vision, the prophet Daniel. And in that dream, he sees 4 great beasts arise out of the Great Sea. The Great Sea is the Mediterranean. The first looks like a lion with eagle's wings. The second looks like a bear. The third like a leopard, but it has 4 heads, so it flies very fast. And the fourth is not even characterized because it's terrible, dreadful, exceedingly strong, and it tramples down everything. You get the idea that it might even conquer these other beasts, or at least take them over. A little horn among the 10. And the little horn comes up and begins to speak words like a person, blaspheming God and persecuting the people of God. So this is the great persecutor. Historically, this is understood by most interpreters as the Greek ruler Antiochus Epiphanes, the Syrian Greek ruler of the 2nd century BC. You remember the Maccabean period, the little horn that speaks against the people of God. But because the end did not come, you can see how these beasts are going to get extended. In the time of Jesus, this was usually seen as Babylon the lion, Persia the bear, the leopard as Greece, or Alexander the Great and his empire and his successors. And the fourth beast was seen as Rome. And then it was interpreted as having 10 horns and a little horn. And that little horn was variously seen as something to come in the future. So at various points in time, people have reinterpreted these beasts all the way down to our own time. I have a YouTube series that goes through all of this in great detail, talking about interpretations of Bible prophecy through the ages. I'll put the link in the description. So leaving these 4 beasts aside, what happens next? Daniel 7 verse 9, as I looked. So Daniel in the vision, in dream, is looking at these beasts coming up out of the Mediterranean Sea. And as he looks, he sees thrones placed. And one that was Ancient of Days took his seat. His raiment was white as snow. The hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames. Its wheels were burning fire. So it's kind of a chariot throne that we know from various kinds of Jewish literature called Merkabah literature. A stream of fire issued and came forth from before him, and thousands served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. So you do the math on that, it's in the millions. And the court sat in judgment, and the books were open. So here Daniel looks up and he sees the heavenly throne of God. God is referred to as the Ancient of Days and described in this glorious fashion with this fiery display surrounding him and thousands upon thousands of angelic attendants and so forth. In the different depictions of the throne of God throughout the Hebrew Bible, God has a court of Elohim, or powers, gods that sit with him in rulership over the world. And here the court is sitting in judgment, and the books are open. The books have to do with judgment, recording the behavior of human beings and pronouncing judgment. And I look then because of the sound of the great words which the horn was speaking. So he's kind of astounded that this little horn has the audacity to kind of raise its little head up to the heavens and speak blasphemous words and persecute the people of God. And so this manifestation of the judgment is in order to vindicate the persecuted people of God, probably referring historically, we think, to the Maccabean period. And as I look, the beast was slain and its body destroyed and given over to be burned with fire. And so this beast, with all of its terrible power and display, is utterly crushed and defeated. And the rest of the beasts had their dominion taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So these different empires around the Mediterranean world and the ancient Near East, they continue, Babylon, Persia, Greece. But in this case, the fourth beast is completely destroyed and burned with fire. Then the next verse, and here's where we get the Son of Man idea. And I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like a son of man. Now notice, it's like a son of man. It simply means in Hebrew or Aramaic, like a human being. Now, human beings don't belong in heaven. And the idea that a human being would be in the heavenly world draws Daniel's attention, because he sees someone like a human being in heaven. This is actually in Aramaic, not Hebrew, and it's Bar Enosh. I wrote the block Hebrew Aramaic script for you, but here's the English transliteration, Bar Enosh. And this Son of Man comes to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. So he has an audience before the very throne of God. And notice, and to him was given dominion and glory and kingdom, and all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. So this idea of a kingdom that will never be destroyed correlates with Daniel 2, a previous dream of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, that Daniel had interpreted, where this image of the world kingdoms is brought down by a stone that strikes it. And Daniel 2:44 puts it very succinctly. And in the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, and it will break in pieces all the other kingdoms and stand forever. And so the visions are very similar. They both predict a time when the kingdom of God would be set up over the entire world. Now, here's what many have overlooked. If you keep reading in the book of Daniel, this is the vision, and then Daniel's given the interpretation. He doesn't know what to think about these four beasts and the little horn and the blasphemy and the persecution of the saints. This is all future to him, according to the text. And he's puzzled by it, and he asks for the interpretation. And then he's given the interpretation. Basically, these are four kingdoms that are going to arise, and there's going to be a little horn, a ruler that destroys the saints of God, the people of God. Saints in this case means the people of God, the faithful people of God. He makes war with them and wears them out, literally, as the text says. That's the interpretation. Until the Ancient of Days came, that would be the judgment. And judgment was given for the saints of the Most High, and the time came when the saints received the kingdom. So the hymn here refers to the collective people of God receiving the kingdom, and all peoples, nations, and languages are then serving them. They collectively are the Son of Man. That's how it's interpreted in the book of Daniel. So later, when Christians read this and they thought of the second coming of Jesus in the clouds of heaven, they found it very easy to say, well, this is a prophecy of Jesus returning in a second coming, bringing judgment to the world, when actually, in context, it's interpreted as a time when judgment is given for the saints of the Most High. In other words, in their behalf, and a time when they are given the kingdom collectively. Now, I know someone might say, well, the collective group of the saints might have a head or a ruler like a Messiah. But the point is, this text is not about a Davidic figure. It's not about a Messiah. It's nothing to do with Jesus per se as the figure of the Son of Man. Now, when you go to the Gospels, you find that Son of Man is used, particularly in the Gospel of Mark and the Synoptic Gospels, to refer to Jesus as a human being. Now, in the rest of the Hebrew Bible, this is very consistent. Son of Man, whether it's Hebrew or Aramaic, just means a human being. Here's a psalm that makes it clear. Psalm 146, verse 3. Put not your trust in princes, in a son of man in whom there's no help. In other words, in a human being. This is Hebrew parallelism. There's don't trust in human rulers or any human being, because humans are like the grass of the field and so forth. They fade away. You find this in the book of Ezekiel, when Ezekiel, the prophet, has his visions and he's taken up to heaven and sees all these things. He's addressed as you son of man, you earthling, in other words, you human being. The whole point of Daniel 7 is that all the power of the world is put into the hands of God's people, and they're being glorified in giving this everlasting kingdom, this everlasting dominion. And that is the interpretation of Daniel 7. Now, when you go to the Gospels, Mark chapter 14, verse 62, Jesus is asked by the high priest Caiaphas, "Are you the Messiah?" And he does answer in Mark. This is just in Mark. "I am." In some of the other accounts, he says, "You said," or "You said I am." But here he outright says, "I am the Messiah. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." Now that's interpreted later to mean, and you'll see me coming back and I'm going to be judging you. But notice Jesus is standing on trial, and in context, what he's saying is, yes, I am, and you as a Jewish priest backed up by Roman power do in fact, like these beasts, have power over the saints to persecute and kill. He's getting ready to order Jesus crucified and take him to Pontius Pilate. But you're going to see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven. In other words, you're going to see this great event that's prophesied in the book of Daniel. Now, obviously, Mark, in writing this, believes that Jesus will return and he's going to usher in this coming. But the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven is interpreted as the saints of the Most High taking over the kingdom. And that's clearly the meaning in the book of Daniel. Now, elsewhere in the New Testament, it's getting used for what people later call the parousia, or the second coming of Christ. But in its original context, it means the takeover or arrival of the kingdom of God. Mark begins his gospel.
So, like I said before, typology right here, what he's talking about is in true effect. The Son of Man we see is not who they say it is, not Jesus Christ. Go back to, like I said, in typology, that's another way they came in and figured out how to put JC in the Old Testament, as they concocted them. Or at the Council of Nicaea, they had to go and find places, plug them into the scriptures, and this is one of them right here. We say the Son of Man. And so when you understand exactly what Son of Man is, you know what I'm saying? And then they got, like he said, Matthew, Mark, Luke, them talking about calling Jesus the Son of Man. Well, which one is he? He's God, or he's the Son of Man? He's an angel, or he's the Son of Man? Which one is he? And that in itself is dead giveaway right there. It should send you on your way. Okay. Anybody have any comments or questions about that? Okay. Shalom, brother. Okay. Anybody have any comments before we close out?
No, no, sir. But shalom, Mr. Leonard. Shalom, everybody.
Shalom. So we completed another Shabbat. Shalom, shalom, and another shalom.